First of all, we have to start with saying thank you to HTVC, MEDP, Kohana. It's amazing that we even have this space on Maui. We all know Maui isn't always the most technologically advanced. So the fact that we have this here is huge for us. So let's give all of them an applause for doing this. I love that we so thank you all for coming. Like Robbie just said, we're just gonna kind of have a little talk story session. We're happy to have Nick and Brittany here and home back on Maui. They have a ton of experience in the tech field, just a ton of experience with growing businesses, and that's why I'm assuming you folks are all here to listen to them talk. I grew up with Nick down the street, and so we grew up on Maui, graduated from Baldwin, with a couple others in the room over here. And so I personally love when Maui kids come back home, give back to the community, and do things like this. So I'm super excited to be here. What we are going to do is talk about, I have a bunch of questions that I want to ask them, so I'm going to do that for about 20 minutes. While we're doing that and they're talking about their experience and what they did, take notes. And also, if you have any questions, take notes on your questions, because then we're going to turn it over to you folks, and you folks are going to have the floor and you guys are going to ask them any questions. So let's get started. Show of hands really quickly. Who here has a business and is running a business currently? A lot of you, that's awesome. Good job. And who here is on the verge of starting up a business and wants to get a little bit more information, kind of afraid to make that big jump? We have a couple of them. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, that's why we're all here today. So hopefully you folks will get some insight, some experience, and just some tips and tricks from these two. So let's start with a quick overview of your background. So Brittany, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. So thank you guys all for being here today. It's so great to get to know a lot of you guys as you're walking in. So I really enjoyed that. So quick background on me. I'm from Southern California, and I met this guy in college, and the second I met him, he was like, I'm from Maui, and if you really love me, you are going to move to Maui. So that's been on the table for a really long time. I graduated college, worked in wealth management for a couple of years, and had this realization that I didn't want to make rich people richer. I wanted to go out and do something meaningful in the world. And so I ended up going to Georgetown Law. I got a JD and Master's of Public Policy and thought I was going to do government, nonprofit, something like that. I went to the Obama White House and I started working on entrepreneurship and economic development, and I just completely fell in love with it. It was so interesting, and I felt like I was really working on something that could help people develop and grow and create an economic base for our country. And so I ended up starting a company called 1776 in end of 2012, and it was an incubator to help startups that were doing something related to government. That blossomed into so many things. We raised a venture capital fund of $12.5 million. We've invested in 45 companies at this point. We have an app that we built to manage startup communities. We have over 45 very high caliber programs running on that at this point. And we have scaled to 50 people, which is not, Silicon Valley crazy scale, but it is a good amount of people. And I've learned a ton from our growing revenue, our growing teams, and it's been a really good experience. And so it got to a point where I could, take a step back. And so we did that about 6 months ago, and it's fun now.
Yeah.
Nick, your turn.
So we moved to Washington, D.C. in 2009. We basically came and went with the Obama administration wisely. Our friends there complain about it all the time still. So I worked at a company called Living Social, which is a big tech company, raised about $1 billion. And spent all of it. And so it was this meteoric rise and one of the fastest growing companies ever. So I was lucky to work amongst incredibly smart, intelligent people and gained a startup skill set there across the board. I wore a bunch of different hats, and so took that experience, actually did a product marketing job at a different software company for a little while. And then 2.5 years ago, we started a meal delivery service called Galley. I'll give you a quick pitch. Basically, we're a meal delivery app. From your standpoint, you look at our menu for the day and you just choose your meal and choose a delivery window, and we'll have it at your door. at that 30-minute slot. So it's a simple tap of the button. Everything's all inclusive. It's $12 to $14 for a meal. There's no subscription. The food's already fully prepared. You just reheat it in the oven in our biodegradable oven-safe packaging. On the back end, it's an extremely complex business. We cook the food, which is tough to do. We change the menu every single day, so our culinary team has to create 6 new dishes from scratch every single day. I don't recommend anyone in the food business to try to do this. We build the tech for it, so we have our own engineering team, and then we also deliver. So we have our own fleet of drivers. We have about 100 people on the streets of DC every night delivering these meals. So I handled sales and marketing for Galley. So basically took it from 0 to 7 figures in annual revenue. It was incredible, fast growth. We grew about 30% month over month. A lot of it was just me out hustling and then using a lot of strategy and data analytics and stuff to make sure that we're growing in the right places and looking at our metrics appropriately, which I'm sure we'll dig into a little bit more. But yeah, so that's my background, big tech company, and then got into the small early stage world of startups.
Perfect. So now that you guys know their background, kind of a little bit more about their experience, can we talk a little bit about the purpose, why we're here today, kind of what we're going to talk about, why HCDC and MCD wanted to do this today?
Yeah. So the purpose of tonight is, one, to share our insights from building companies, but it's also to start a workshop series where we'll dig into specific skill sets. So following tonight, we'll also do workshops on fundraising, pitch practice and pitching your business, digital marketing, sales and sales techniques, and I'm missing one.
Digital marketing?
Yeah, okay.
Maybe this. This is the whole talk story part. You know, it's not scripted.
Yeah. Right. And then we also do office hours 10 to 2 on Thursdays, and we can help talk through anything that's happening. And I know in my process of starting a business, the more people you can talk to, the better, and get insights on whatever it is. So that's what we do, and this is meant to start the learning and also to promote the other things that we'll be doing in the future, and hope you guys can take advantage of that. And thanks to HTC and MUV for this.
Okay, so you obviously have a lot of experience in high growth companies. Can you guys talk a little bit about how you did this? I know for you, you did everything from the ground up. Like if you had to clean floors, you clean floors. If you had to design something, you designed something. And I know Nick did a bunch of photography, and you kind of do every little thing. So can you guys kind of take us through those steps on just basically how you accomplished such high growth?
Yeah.
So I'll preface it by saying we're in venture-backed startups. So these are it's a slightly different beast in that usually you have, or at least are budgeting to have, a large amount of capital to go deploy towards growth. And primarily that's what these companies that get millions of dollars in venture funding, it's so that they can grow way faster than people that don't get these millions of dollars. So with that, you need a sort of a playbook or a framework to grow. And so for us, and I'll speak specifically to Galley, so we delivered food. It's not a novel concept. And like when you're starting a business, I'm sure if you're familiar at all with lean startup or any of these startup concepts, there's a product market fit, which every company that is successful has or has achieved. And new companies that have never sort of, like when Facebook started, they had no clue if they were gonna have product market fit, and they very quickly learned like, wow, everyone at Harvard adopted this overnight. Product market fit has been achieved, and now let's scale it. And there's a lot of companies that poke around at it for a while. Airbnb, for example, they didn't know what they're doing, and they did a bunch of whole stuff, and then they finally figured it out. Like their one thing that actually helped them get off the ground was they realized they needed better photos because the user-submitted photos weren't working well enough. So they literally flew to New York, took photos of the apartment, made it look really nice, and then their app started taking off. So sometimes you have to work this product market fit. Stepping back. So we did food. Food is a very known entity, and there's sort of a defined product market fit already there. Our problem was going to be more like actually achieving the value proposition that we set out. So we're like, we're going to deliver you this delicious, homemade, high quality meal for $12, all inclusive, including tax, tip, and delivery in 30 minutes. And as a consumer, like, they were like, that is awesome, please give it to me. But the business, we had to figure out how to actually make this work and make the economics work, so this is 2014. A bunch of companies have raised money on venture capital for on-demand businesses. So everyone wants the Uber for X. So this is kind of like the Uber for food, even though we never ever described ourselves as such. But on-demand businesses are they lost a lot of money, and many of them are not around anymore and are really struggling. So anyways, you have to have this framework for growth, and our framework was basically like, we're going to deliver to this specific neighborhood. I'm going to go target this specific neighborhood. I'm going to market to it. I'm going to try to achieve density. And if I can achieve density, I usually use newspaper delivery as an example of achieving this geographical density. So newspapers back in the day, and maybe you still get a newspaper today, I don't know, not many people still do, but they could deliver a newspaper to your door for 50, 75 cents. And there's no way anyone could make that work. Like if you're getting fast food delivered, there's going to be a minimal fee. But since they delivered every single door, they could afford to do it because they could deliver 100 newspapers in an hour. And so the same concept applies to us. It's like, how can we get enough people ordering on this block in this neighborhood so that we can actually have our drivers just go from door to door to door? And that's the holy grail of on-demand delivery, because your per delivery costs can actually drop and your unit economics look a lot better. So yeah, so we had to figure this out. And then our sort of general virtuous growth cycle is that go market to this neighborhood. We can get this neighborhood to like food. Hopefully they tell their neighbors and refer their neighbors. And at the same time, we'd have this geographical cutoff, like we don't deliver here. So people across the border would be like, oh my gosh, you guys need to come deliver here. And we'd be like, oh, well, get your friends. And if enough people like say they want us to come here, then we'll open up. So we sort of encourage them to market it for us. So that was part of that like virtuous cycle. We just continue to do that for geographical expansion. There's a ton of other stuff that went into it. But yeah, so the general framework was the virtuous cycle that we tried to use. And then there's a whole bunch of data analytics and like finding. So the general principle is there's a LTV or
Lifetime value.
yes. And
Why they work well together.
yeah, so you have to, so to deploy the amount of money, if I'm going to go give you a free meal, which we did, so that's it. The hard cost to me is $10 to give you a free meal to try it, because I think that if you're going to try it, you're going to keep coming back. I need to actually prove that you're going to spend more than $10 with us again, so I can earn your money back, and then you're actually become profitable for us. And so you have to closely track all this data, otherwise you have no clue. You're just giving away that $10 and you don't know what you're getting back. But if I know that for every customer I'm acquiring, their lifetime value is $100, I'm going to spend that $10 all day on as many people as I can. So we were able to prove that, and we have a strong LTV.
And I think what was interesting about you guys is, they were a tech company, and so everyone just assumes like, we're going to do digital marketing because they're a tech company. And digital marketing is where it's at, and that's where you get all your returns. But they actually did a lot of offline marketing as well, which they found to be just as effective. And I think that's just a good example of just because digital marketing's around actually doesn't mean that it's the right path for you to get this kind of cost to value ratio. So they would go to apartment buildings, they would stand on the street and hand out flyers. And I mean, all of their data showed that it was actually a more cost-effective way to get users than targeting, a specific zip code on Facebook.
Yeah. So the general marketing principle is to go to wherever the white space is, and digital is so saturated that we're like, well, nobody's offline, we'll go offline and try to win there. And then with food, it worked really well because people like trying the food. Looking at Harold over here is a banana business, and so like if people try his bananas, they'll be like, "This is good, I will buy it again." If I tell you online, my food's really good, you'd be like, "I haven't tried it, I don't believe you." So we did a lot of traditional food stuff, even though we were a high growth, built for scale food company. But yeah, so the general concept being like, yes, offline is a channel, but from a marketing standpoint, we have all these different channels, and I know what each channel costs me to acquire a user. And so the offline channel is actually our cheapest channel. So we deploy the most amount of our marketing budget towards that channel because I could get the most users out of it. But we still did digital, we still had a referral program, we still had all these other things. The offline piece was actually the thing. It's super hard to scale because it's a physical, like you have to literally go and try the food. And I had to go build a team of people that could go literally, hey, go to this apartment building, do you want to try my food? Yeah, whereas like if it's digital advertising, it's be like, yes, spend more money. Let's spend more on this campaign. So that was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd say the way that we were different is, first going back to product market fit, me and my other co-founders, the first thing we want to do was like, we're going to raise $100 million fund and invest in startups. And we started pitching people and they're like, does any of you have venture capital experience? And we're like, no. They're like, well, no, we're not giving you money. And so that actually was how we ended up starting with our co-working and incubator business, because we realized that there we could, we got, a few different sponsorships. We could start very quickly, and we showed that we actually were delivering value to our customers, which were startups, and that they were actually growing and succeeding. And so after a year and a half of doing that, we went back to the same investors and said, hey, look at us now. We've done all these things. We work with all these startups. We're starting to really learn what's working and what's not. And at that point, they were like, okay, yeah, sure, here's money. And so the secret.
It's literally that easy.
Yeah.
It's
not that easy.
That was a joke.
So it's just, I think that's an interesting case study, just in the sense of, depending on whatever your end goal, you might have to sequence differently to achieve that, and prove out to people that you're capable and you can actually deliver on the things that you say you can deliver on. Because when you start a company, you're making all of these different assumptions. And the best way to de-risk it is start to go and test all of those individual assumptions. So just the one other thing that, a couple other tactics that we used at the outset was really building our narrative around what made us different. And at the time, there was nothing that was bringing the startup, DC startup and venture capital scene together. And so we worked a lot on, crafting a very inspiring narrative, working a lot with PR and reporters and events to bring a lot of different people in. We had, we would do photos of, our building our space and all of this stuff to really gain buy-in from the community, and using all the various channels that we could use to get that buy-in, and help people get to know us and trust us.
Awesome. So on that note, do you folks have personally any tools, tips, tricks? I know you kind of talked broadly about tactics, but I think what I would probably benefit from, and what you would benefit from, is, a book you read that you found really inspirational that gave you motivation to actually take that leap, or a software company that you use to really help you organize the structure of the company, or just, little tips like that you could share that would help in building a company.
So the book that is very over publicized in Silicon Valley, but I actually do find extremely helpful as a framework, is the Lean Startup book. And it goes through the framework of how to build a company in a lean way, and how you use data, and how you can see with a group as small as 20 people on if your product or your solution or anything is gaining traction. And I think that's just a really important mindset. And it's funny, today 1776 runs corporate innovation programs, and we teach the Lean Startup principles to corporations. It's like multinational, hundreds of millions of dollars corporations, because the mindset and the way of thinking about how you develop a product and bring it to market is super, super helpful. So I would absolutely recommend that book by Eric Ries. There's another one that's a little bit more dense, Running Lean by Ash Maurya, which is more practical, implementation based. It will take you through different steps of interviews and things like that. And I'd say the third thing, and I read this newsletter every day, is the Mattermark newsletter. And they consolidate business building insights and techniques from across the world, but mostly the country, because now everyone is into blogging and lessons learned and all this stuff. But it's great because I can learn things that, the head of ops for, Airbnb is thinking on their best practices. Like, great, if the head of ops for Airbnb wants to tell me what has made them successful. I will take that knowledge. And so that's a newsletter that I really love.
I missed the name of that.
It's called Mattermark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spell that, please.
Matter, MATTERMARK. I really love that one as well. And Fred Wilson, he's an investor in New York. He's great.
What was the second book?
Running Lean by Ash Maria.
This is awesome. This was helpful. Taking notes. That's the goal.
Do you have any others you want to
Yeah,
say?
do you have anything to add?
Books wise, so I really like a book called Hard Thing About the Hard Things, which is more of a like wartime CEO story. It's Ben Horowitz, who's one of the partners at Andreessen Horowitz, which is a big VC firm. So if you have a business that is looking or at a place of inflection where you're either going to make it or break it, like that is the book to read. It will get you jacked up on figuring out how to make it work. And then, so 37 Signals are the guys that do, I don't know if you know, Basecamp and what else do High Rise and Campfire are their products. They wrote a book called Rework, which is kind of contrarian, and like every chapter is a page long and stuff like that, because they just like question everything about how people traditionally think about business. But it is good because you're like, wow, I thought that's how you did it, but I guess you can do it another way as well.
Can you actually talk about those software platforms like Basecamp and those things, just because I think that's something tangible that people here could probably Slack, Basecamp, all those things that are helpful?
Yeah, so our tool stack, if you will, we use Slack. So I don't know, does anybody here use Slack for any of your companies? So yeah, so Slack is a messaging app, and it's primarily targeted for enterprise or businesses. So it's a B2B company. Other competitors are HipChat is one of them. Microsoft has a new thing they're trying to compete. It's called Teams, I think. Mm-hmm. But it's basically, it's just like it's the business version of any type of WeChat or any of those WhatsApp type applications. But we, like at Galley, we do not email. Like there's zero email communication. It's all via chat. Yeah, it's all via Slack.
What's interesting that you guys use is Periscope to pull in all your data and run.
Yeah. So there's a Periscope, not the live feed Periscope. This is a Periscope data company. So there's analytics or business intelligence tools that we have that sit on top of our database, so that the value there is our data is accessible by literally anyone in the company. So if anyone has any question about like, oh, how many customers do we have? Like which meal is selling the most? It's accessible. So we have these dashboards that we have built, and it's literally for everything about the business. So if you have any question about the business, you have an answer at your fingertips. You don't even have to ask your manager for access to this data. Down to like, we have a dashboard that literally shows our daily order pacing. So we can say like, oh, compared to yesterday, we're pacing slower than average. We should like send out a push alert, or we should maybe send out an email in the afternoon, or we should like try to do something to drive sales a little bit.
Other things, MailChimp is a good one for email marketing. We used obviously Google Apps and Google Exchange are great. When we started out, I think we used Wix to build our site and all that. There are so many things out there now that can build your app. There's just like little template things that you just pull in. So pretty much anything that you're building in the tech space at this point, I'm sure there's something out there where you probably don't need a custom developer to do anything besides some of the front end stuff, or if you have some new different technology that maybe hasn't been built. But I mean, for the most part, there's lots of different plugins that you can put. For example, I just heard someone hiring a developer to build a subscription feature into their app, and there's tons of subscription things that you can just plug in so that you don't have to pay for that.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to kind of think about what's out there to save on costs.
Especially initially.
Yeah,
there's an argument for if it's if you have product market fit and you're actually trying to scale, sometimes it's easier to actually have a custom solution on the website side. So there are limitations to the Shopify's and the Wixes and the free.
But it's a good start so that you can validate your market. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Couple more really quick questions, and then we're gonna take it to you folks. Can you guys talk about the importance of analytics? I think there's a lot of conversation around analytics, whether it be website analytics or social media analytics, but just how that has driven the growth in your business, how you look at that and make changes. You kind of touched upon it briefly.
Yeah, so I'll speak generally. So now growth, like the term growth, there's like growth hackers, which I hate that term, but there's growth hackers, like growth is its own profession or industry in and of itself. And it is sort of thought of as different than marketing or brand or that stuff. And this is purely like user acquisition. So their job is to go figure out how to get new users. And so I could use Galley as an example. I'll use like Uber's growth team is probably 20 or 30 people, and they have engineers on the team. They have actual marketers. They do content. They do all this stuff. But they're all focused on, they'll have like a company metric that everyone's gearing towards. So like Facebook, for example, their metric was 7 friends or something early on. And if they had data that showed that if they could get their new users to somehow connect with 7 friends, their likelihood of staying on the platform and like actually using Facebook was much, much higher. And so everyone's driving and building towards that metric. So maybe if you're a user acquisition person, you're like just trying to get as many people through your marketing funnel as you can onto the app. But then once they're on the app, the product manager's job is to then say like, okay, how can I get these people to connect with their friends? Like, can I make suggestions? Can I send them a push alert to be like, hey, so-and-so, David just joined Facebook. You should connect with him. Things like that. So there's all these different tactics that go to try to improve that single North Star metric that you have. And that may be revenue. It may be like, if you're just looking for growth, it might be like new users or subscribers if you're an email list or whatever that is. But then, and from an analytics standpoint, we literally will have a number and a percentage and a dollar amount on everything that's happening. And you should be constantly, or we will constantly monitor that and make sure it's like going in the right direction.
And it's different for every business. So if you think about your own business, what is that metric for you? And obviously revenue is going to be important to everybody. We need money to exist. But, it could be, for example, in one of our portfolio companies, it could be unit economics. And, they started out and they were just growing like crazy, but they realized that they were spending way more per, in their case, it was ride. They were similar to an Uber, but for kids. They figured out they were spending way more on rides than they were actually earning. And so their main goal for 3 months was to reduce that cost. And so it's going to be different at different points in your business and for different businesses.
Yeah, but if you're like everyone's goal is going to be more revenue. That's just a generic business thing. But like, what is the core metric that drives the revenue is what I guess you should focus on. And so for Galley, that might be like, yes, we need new users and new customers, but then we also need those new people to order twice within the first week. And if we can get them to order twice within the first week, they're going to have enough experience. They're going to like the food. They're going to come back. So our metric would be like, what tactics can we deploy to actually get these people to A, try the food, but then B, order 2 or 3 times in that first week. And so there's a bunch of different things that we did to do that. And you watch that metric and you do these tactics and you hopefully try to grow that specific number or metric.
Last question really quick. Britt, you opened with saying that you've worked with thousands of companies, which is mind-blowing to me. What's your favorite? And why was it successful? So kind of, go kind of a broad overview on what they did that worked.
Yeah. So who here has worked for a company that you don't own? Like you just were an employee somewhere? Yeah. Okay. So you guys all know that most companies are run very badly. And so there are a lot of things that are not best practices that are out in the workforce. And so I think that there is no perfectly run company, and there's always going to be something that can be improved or is not optimized or whatever. But I would say some of the most successful companies I have seen They've been very, very, very focused on the thing that gets them the most revenue and profitability, and they stay centered on that strategy. They look at the data and they constantly manage that. And we've seen so many companies that do not do that, and it leads them into a really bad place. So one of the companies is called Study Soup, and they do it's actually pretty simple. They do note taking at colleges. And so I'm a really smart student in a class and I take great notes. I can actually sell my notes to the other, kids in the class that are, partying all night
Like
long.
today.
Don't want to go.
You can
Yeah,
sell your
I
notes
can sell my notes to Yeah. So my first question to this was like, isn't that like a problem with IP? But it's not. Apparently schools love it because it helps their students to actually do better, and it reduces the college dropout rate tremendously. And so the CEO there, Sieva, he is just super, super focused on the satisfaction of his note takers. And that was the thing that he has focused on and looked at the activity, their engagement, and he found out that if he had very happy note takers that were very engaged, that was the thing that led to success in all other realms of the business. So that was very interesting, and he's a great CEO. We've had another company called Seamless Docs. They have apps for government. So it turns out that most DMVs are pretty much the same. And so they actually created an app where they can just go to Boise, Idaho and say like, hey, use our DMV app and everything's digitized for you. And they can actually sell that to any municipality or county across the country. And so
his to make a trip to Maui.
Seriously, right now. I know.
To Hawaii, in fact.
Yes, seriously. Yes. I know. When someone walks into your door and says, I can solve your problems with the DMV, you're like, wait, what? Yeah. So they've just been great at enterprise sales, and I think the real superpower of him is he takes every possible meeting he can get. He uses his network, he tracks his pipeline, and he's just dogged about that. So two really impressive.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to you folks. I'm sure you have a bunch of questions. So who wants to start with a question for them? Go ahead.
First question for two of you. How did you both get your funding to start your food delivery? And I'm sorry, I don't remember the incubator. So how did you get your funding? Or did you self-fund?
I'll let her go first.
Yeah, so ours was a government grant from DC, and then a sponsorship from Microsoft. And so those two sponsorships were enough for us to put a security deposit down on a space and do a build out. It also required convincing a landlord to give a space to a company that had just incorporated the day before, and some other convincing of people to take a leap of faith. But that was how we did it. We were cash flow positive for a long time, and then we ended up raising money from a bunch of investors to invest in our app that we ended up building.
Yeah, I guess to preface it, initially it was self-funded, I would say. So it started, there was no app, there was no website. It was a Google Doc with a Google form that was shared out amongst our network and friends. And so like, hey, order this and try it out. And then we went and delivered it. And then as soon as we got the feedback, so we sent everybody.
The co-founders actually cooking the meals in his kitchen.
Yeah. So there was no leases yet or anything like that. So they're cooking the food. And so we gathered feedback from everyone that did order. And initially it was free, with the agreement that we'll do all this. You are our alpha testers, but you have to fill out this feedback form to tell us what you like, what you didn't like. So we use that initial feedback. But anyways, that built traction and an actual story that could then go pitch and tell. So we continued to do that, and then actually built a website and an app. And then once it was off the ground and we had it to a place where we didn't know the names of the people ordering anymore. So like, okay,
this isn't my friend Alan over here.
This is a thing, it's growing. And then we just have one guy that went out and he was our fundraiser. So he went in and raised money, and he'd take money, and then he'd try to prove that you can keep growing, and try to raise more money and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to quickly throw a shout out to Tina Rasmussen. If anyone doesn't know her, she's Office of Economic Development, and she's really helpful in building these relationships. And when you're looking for funding or just looking for the right people, they're very Maui business focused, small business minded, and they kind of understand, just basically how economics work on Maui here. And statewide, I think they have great relationships and just a great outlook on what the future of business coming out of Maui should be. So if you don't know her, she's in the thing over there, everybody. Talk to Tina as well. I mean, OED, MEDB, HTBC, all together has great resources. So I would think use them as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I learned the most is you have to just use your network as much as you possibly can and your community resources as much as you possibly can. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but you just have to. And you just have to get out there. You have to ask people for things in order to get out there.
Sure. Could you expand on what you mean by sponsorship by Microsoft versus an investment for Microsoft?
Oh, yeah. So we just said.
One's equity-based, one's not.
Yeah. So you always
Exactly,
want
but what does that mean in return?
Yeah. So Microsoft, as many of you might know, was not seen as being as cool as Google, and they have a complex about this. And so they actually do things just to be cool and get themselves in front of new tech people so that they get exposure, which you wouldn't think about from the huge company whose founder is the richest person in the world. But yes, so they're always trying to be on the cutting edge, and they're always trying to be in the new cool things that are happening. And so we convinced them that we are the new and cool thing. And so in exchange for some money, we marketed them. So
basically marketing and exchange instead of equity.
So we would say, Kelly, you really want to utilize your cloud storage.
Anyway, you cannot give up equity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we would market Microsoft products to our customers.
Thank you.
Hi, you talked about using your network,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people are hesitant to do that, not to piss off your friends, and
Mm-hmm.
especially the people who might be providing emotional support as you're
Mm-hmm.
building a business. What did you find works? What doesn't work so well? And asking for help?
Yes, so use your network, but also be respectful, I guess, is the caveat to that of how much are people willing to spend time with you. But, people are more willing to help than you might think. They're willing to spend time with you to say, whether or not they think this is a good strategy or not. And so, you always want to both give and get. So, if I'm asking someone to coffee, I want to make sure that I'm being respectful of their time and making sure that they're getting something out of the interaction as well. So I think that's really important. And also being okay with people saying no. It's okay for people to say no.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier if you're asking them something that it doesn't cost them too much time or money.
Yeah.
So like for us, we did this, like try the food and provide feedback, but I tapped into that network several times. So then I actually went back to them as like, okay, we're a thing now. Hey, can you connect me with the person at your company? So a bunch of them work for other big tech companies within DC. I was like, hey, can you connect me with whoever in your company sort of has the ability to send an email to everyone at the company? And then I would give them a company specific promo code. And for them, it's not really that big of an ask to say oh, here's the office manager. And then I went back again when we did corporate accounts and be like, hey, can you connect with that person again? We did the same thing with Yelp, and we tried to get our Yelp page up. So we looked at Yelp, who in my network is a Yelp elite? That's a thing. I did not know that. But Yelp has elite people, and they're the ones that do all the reviews. And so we found the 3 friends that we had that were Yelp elite, and we're like, hey, we'll give you a bunch of free food. Can you write a nice review about this? Which you're not supposed to do, but it works. Yeah. And so you keep going back and you be strategic about it. So yeah, we didn't ask our entire network to review us on Yelp. We asked 3 people. We're like, hey, can you review this?
I think that's true. You have to be targeted and relevant and specific about your question. Yeah. Yep.
Give us your thoughts on the difference between your businesses, which are in a metropolitan area of about 6 million people, versus Maui's 163. And
No difference. No difference.
Yeah, it's a good question, and the scale is very different. You know, we want to start companies again. We want to do it here on Maui, and so I think we're going to take the skill sets and the mindsets that we learned from doing this at, you know, maybe a bigger scale and apply it here. And it's still finding a market and a customer who wants something you're selling. And no matter if you're, you know, at a revenue of, you know, $10,000 a year or, you know, $10 million a year, those same principles apply. How to listen to your customers, talk to your customers, build a product that they want to buy.
So you guys talked about your North Star analytic. I'm just curious, do you find that intuitively from your experience, or is there a way to determine the question and the thing that you're analyzing that would help determine growth, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's somewhat intuitive, but a lot of it is digging into what is the actual core, the cause. So not like the symptom. So the symptom would be, we made lots of money. It's like, well, why did you make lots of money? Oh, because we have lots of users. Oh, why do you have lots of users? Oh, because we did X. And like, if we do X, does everything else just fall in place? And that would be the one thing that you should like focus on.
So it's testing. So certain things you're not going to know until you test it and see if that actually has effects or not.
Yeah, but the North Star, like you're saying, is that one, would be that one thing that, a lot of it is
but
I
guess what I'm saying is it's you know, if you pick one and it doesn't necessarily seem to be the one that's moving the needle, then you move to another one. And so, you know, you may be moving your metric over time to a different thing based on what's happening.
And a bunch of it is like internal motivation. So it's like something to rally around and get everyone focused on. Because like revenue can get boring for people. Like maybe it's like, whatever, we made more money, I don't know. But if it's something specific, maybe the marketing team can focus on it, but maybe like accounting or HR can actually do things that can affect that number as well somehow. I don't know. In like these big tech companies, maybe HR can hire a better growth marketer or like hire a better engineer or something like that affects it.
One thing that what happened to us is we actually didn't have a metric that we were managing to, and so we were kind of doing this other project, and we interviewed about 75 of our startups. And out of those, we were trying to figure out like what was our biggest value add to our customers. Just as we've been in business 3 years, and we're thinking about what do we need to do differently to grow more, be better to our customer. And we thought actually that it was going to be our mentor network. Like, oh, we connect our startups with all of the mentors, and they're these great mentors that tell them exactly what to do in sales or fundraising or whatever. And the thing that came back from all of our customers was that the community was the number one thing they liked. They could go get a coffee or, you know, wherever, and they could see a fellow startup and like, hey, dude, like, I had a really bad fundraising week last week. Like, went out to investors and everyone said no. And then, you know, the guy on the other, or girl on the other side of the table says, you know, I had that same problem, but this is what I did to fix it. And so we're like, wow, so it's the community that's really the most important. And so we actually put our metric around our community and how much our community was engaging to be our metric, and we focused on that for the next 6 months. So I don't know, just an example of that's how we picked one.
And ours probably, because it's a food business, it's not software. It's not like if 3 people use it, it costs me the same as if 1 person uses it. Like if I have to make 3 meals, it's going to cost me 3 times the amount. So the unit economics were very, very important. And like, you don't want to sell something for less than it's costing you. Right. And if we just delivered 1 meal, it was very close to costing us money. And so we did this marketing program where we're giving away free food. So like your first meal is free. You get to try it for free and cost you $0. Costs us whatever, $15 to do it. Which I touched on earlier, we got to make that back. But doing that, we actually learned that the quality of the user was not as good as if we just said like, you know what, we're just going to give you $10. We're going to get less new people, but overall the business is going to be much healthier because we're only letting in good people. Because when we were giving everyone free food, like I'd go to Metros and just hand out free promo codes. And so like, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of, affluent, like good customers, but there's going to be a bunch of like people that are just like, I'll take a free
22,
meal for
working
sure.
on the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like,
They have the money and they're like, great, free
yeah, so
stuff.
they take the free meal and then they'll complain that it's too expensive at $12, and you're like, what? Like, okay. So yeah, you also want to figure out. And we didn't necessarily like fire those customers, but you kind of don't want to market to them. You're like, all right, I don't say I don't care about you, but like you're not a good customer for me. How can I focus on these people that are actually going to like provide the most value to us as a business?
Do you charge a nominal fee to weed out the people who want free stuff?
Yeah, so like at $10 off, you're paying $2, and like
Right.
$2 is nothing if
Yeah.
you actually are someone that
Exactly.
probably wants to use the service. But you'd be surprised. It is literally that simple to weed out entire amount of people that were just clogging the system and costing us a lot of money, and because we still have to deliver the food and we still have to do this whole thing.
Can I ask to that question, how long did it take from that experiment to changing your behavior in that particular example?
So a bunch of it, we're monitoring it, and we would move like overnight. So we'd be like, all right, we're turning all of this off, and overnight we're changing our entire program. So very, very quick, and there's 4 of us, so we could move really, really fast. But yeah, we made a couple big business decisions that were literally like, this is happening, we're gonna do it, and it's gonna happen in 2 days. And it'd be like, we're making this entire shift, and it's gonna happen tomorrow. And so you gotta move quickly, but you stop the bleeding or whatever it is very, very quickly as well.
Is that contingent upon having you mentioned the programs on top of your databases from the beginning?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
okay.
The biggest piece is making sure that you're collecting the data. So it's tough to do any, analytics if there's nothing to analyze. So yeah, so from day one, capture as much data about everything. And so by that I mean, like, yes, email and name, but like, what else can you get? Like, how often are they ordering? What location are they ordering from? What time are they ordering? Like all these different data points that you can then use and look at and analyze. Yeah, you can start doing all these different, looking at everything in all these different ways as long as you have the data.
So to be respectful of everybody's time, we're gonna take one last question and then,
Can I squeeze in?
yeah, you.
Sorry, we got a group online
Oh,
and they
yes.
had asked a question.
Oh, of
so I
course.
don't wanna-
Oh, sure.
I don't
Go
wanna
ahead.
exclude them, but, we talked a lot about success. The question online was, can you describe a time when you experienced a failure? How'd you deal with it and what you learned from it? Sorry to cut in line.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Sorry, I didn't know we had questions up there. So.
So I think and those of you who have businesses, which is a lot of you, you understand this. In business, you fail a lot. And there are mistakes that you make, and it's a at least weekly occurrence that something happens that you wish you could have done better or whatever else. As for a specific example of a failure, and I would say this is going to sound dumb in some ways, but we decided that we wanted to do a conference on a specific topic, and nobody showed up. So what does that tell you? No one's interested in this
Real
topic.
life. Real life.
Yeah. So we realized, all right, when we do this next time around, we're going to do it different. So I think the important part is really learning from those mistakes.
Yeah, so we started with dinner, and the dinner business was taking off and growing exponentially. We're like, oh my gosh, like, how can we grow? Like, let's open up lunch, like the other meal of the day. And so we did that. We're like, this is gonna be so easy. Everyone's downtown. It's gonna be like easy deliveries, and like we're like this. It was a little bit lower price point. I was like, who wouldn't want like lunch delivered to them for $10 all in? We were totally wrong. And delivering.
Turns out people like walking out to lunch,
Yeah.
getting some sunlight, and
Yeah, so people really value the like leaving. They're like they don't want to stay and they want to get out. Plus delivering to office buildings is a nightmare. You have to like find somewhere to park in downtown DC, and then they want you to come up to floor 10 and like give it to the, and you're like, no, we can't do that. This is a $10 order. We just can't make it work. So the product market fit was not there. The customer experience was not good. So that was one of those things that we like finally like stepped back and look at it. We're like, we need to turn this off. And so we did that literally overnight. Because if you like, so like, oh, well, let's try this couple other things and do this stuff. It's going to be 6 months later, and it's probably not going to be much better. The results are probably going to be pretty similar unless it's like a drastic change or something.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is understanding the source of the problem so that you can change it.
So if you folks have any other questions, we are all going to walk across the street to get a beer so you can talk to them personally, I believe. Are we doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys want to grab a beer, maybe I'm not with Bruco, we're going to do that next. So if you do have a question, you can hit them up then. But thank you guys again so much for coming. Thank you guys for being here and sharing your
Thank you.